Hi, I'm Dick Howe. It's September 11th, 2011, the 10th anniversary of the terrorist attacks of September 11th. In the aftermath of that day, I put aside many newspapers that were delivered during the weeks after the attack. And in recognition of the anniversary, I pulled some of them out, and I thought I might share the headlines and the photographs that were on the front page stories as a reminder of what it was like in the weeks following that day. On September 12th, Wednesday, the next day, the Boston Globe headline said, "A new day of infamy," and the photograph that illustrated the page was of the rubble where the World Trade Center once stood. The New York Times of that day said, "U.S. attacked, hijacked jets destroy Twin Towers and hit Pentagon in day of terror." And the photograph on the front page was of the fireball that erupted from one of the towers when the plane struck it. The Boston Herald of September 12th had a simple headline, "War," with a subhead said, "U.S. vows punishment after terrorist attacks kill, injure thousands." And the main picture on that front page was the fireball erupting from the Twin Towers as well. On Thursday, September 13th, the New York Times said, "Stunned rescuers comb attack sites, but thousands are presumed dead. FBI tracking hijackers' movements." And there's a photograph of rescue workers clearing away some of the rubble at Ground Zero. On Thursday, September 13th, in the Globe, it said, 12 suspects eyed in hijackings. Grim search for bodies goes on. And there's a photo of the search for bodies and survivors, even at that point, at the World Trade Center site. But there's also a photograph of Mohammed Atta, who was the kind of the ringleader of the terrorists. And so within 2 days of the attack, they had already identified him as the prime mover. On Friday, September 14th, New York Times, Bush and top aides proclaim policy of ending states that back terror, and arrest shuts New York airports. And the big thing I'd like to point out on that is in the photograph, it shows a light post near the World Trade Center, and people started making mimeographed or photocopied flyers searching for their loved ones. And when they first started to go up, they were true efforts to find missing people. But as it became clear that there weren't any survivors, they became memorials. And so there were thousands of them all over New York City. On Saturday, September 15th, New York Times, Bush leads prayer, visits aid crews, Senate 98-0 backs use of armed forces. And there's a photo of then New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani showing President Bush around at World Trade Center, which became known as Ground Zero. Sunday, September 16th, New York Times, Bush tells the military to get ready. Broader spy power is gaining support. And there's a photograph of some firemen carrying a casket of one of their colleagues who died. And that was a scene that was repeated hundreds of times for the firemen who were lost and thousands of times for the people who died. Boston Globe, September 16th. Simply says, Bush, we're at war. There's a picture of Bush with Colin Powell, and then below that there's a photograph of some state police with rifles guarding Logan Airport. Friday, September 28th, more than 2 weeks later, the Boston Globe, Bush urges a return to the skies. So from September 11th to September 28th, there was not a lot of commercial flights going on. But more importantly that day is photographs of all of the hijackers that were released by the FBI. Friday, October 3rd, there was black and white photos from the security cameras at airport check-ins of some of the terrorists who made it through at Logan Airport. The New York Times, October 5th, the Friday, right afterwards, the Times began this special section called the Nation Challenge, which they published every day. And there's another picture of a bagpipe group from the New York City Police or Fire Department getting ready for another funeral. October 13th, a new threat. Anthrax fears spread across U.S. NBC News employee tests positive. Times newsroom evacuated. And you can see that this illustrated news board said tests positive for anthrax. October 23rd, a Tuesday. You have two headlines. One said, 2 workers die and 2 are ill at Capitol's Postal Center. Inhaled anthrax indicated. But on the other side, you have a Northern Alliance soldier in Afghanistan running as American bombs fell near rebel positions. And the headline says, U.S. bombs frontline Taliban. So there's the picture showing that we were already engaging the Taliban in Afghanistan, and there's the headline about the anthrax. Now, I said the Nation Challenge section that the New York Times published every day. One of the most important parts of that was they called it Portraits of Grief. And what they did was they did a small story about every single person who died on September 11th. It wasn't an obituary in that it didn't talk about their relatives or where they were born and where they went to school. Each one of them was just a story about that person. And it was a tremendous effort by the New York Times, and it lasted for more than a year until they got every single person who died that day documented. And in February of 2002, during the February school vacation, our family traveled to New York City to visit Ground Zero. It was very crude then. There was a plywood wall around it. You had tickets at a certain time. You would go up to a small platform that you would look in, and it was just really a big crater at that time. And there still was all the orange spray paint on the buildings in the vicinity and the glass that was broken. But it's hard. While we were there, we picked up this souvenir book called The World Trade Center. And on the back, there's a photograph of the Twin Towers as they stood before the attack. And it's just a reminder that 10 years ago today, in the morning, those towers were standing intact, filled with people. And that by 10 o'clock in the morning, they had both come crashing to the ground and were turned into piles of rubble with thousands dead. And at the Pentagon, there were, I think, 160 or 180 that died. And the passengers aboard the 4 airplanes that crashed, 2 into the World Trade Center towers, 1 at the Pentagon, and the 4th that was under control of the hijackers and heading back to Washington to crash into some target, but that was the one that the passengers took control, and the plane crashed into an open field in Pennsylvania. And so that's my commemoration of 9/11 by showing these photographs. I hope everyone takes some time and thinks about that day and remembers where you are, what you were doing, what you thought, and how your life may have changed since then.